circumstances. And some of these folks have been fortunate enough to get into housing that is not available for far, far too many throughout our state.
Why do you think there's such a way more abundant need or demand for senior housing than there is a supply right now, especially?
Well, there's a lack of affordable housing generally in our state, and especially in Salt Lake City. They keep going the same old, worn-out path of giving millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money to for-profit developers rather than taking the profit out of housing and recognizing that this is a public need. And so even young people aren't able to stay in Salt Lake City by and large because of how expensive housing is. But for seniors especially, it is so tragic because they simply don't have the resources to keep up with the rising rental costs, and they find themselves on the streets. And sometimes because they lost a job, sometimes because their jobs just aren't paying enough to keep up with the rising costs of housing. And there are solutions. That's one thing we keep pounding away at what the problems are. We need people to recognize that there are solutions. There are solutions all around the world. And in some places throughout this country, it's just that there are not enough resources devoted in our state, in our county, and in our city to provide just basic shelter from the elements, let alone the kind of housing that people should be in.
So yesterday night, Jack and I went out just in Pioneer Park. It was not difficult at all to find seniors on the streets who have been kicked out, evicted, who no longer have a place to stay. I want to show a clip right now. If we can play clip 1, Ryan. This is a man named Eric. He's a professional photographer for years and years. He went on and on about our equipment. He was a wildlife photographer. All of his equipment, all of his possessions were stolen, and he got kicked out, evicted from his apartment, and now he's explaining how he lost his ID recently, which was his ticket to be in line to get senior housing. Let's play that clip now.
From the VA, because I'm 100% disabled combat vet. Anyway, they had changed the policy just that afternoon about where you had your backpack. I got everything that's of value to me was in this backpack, like, IDs, everything that's of any value. And they want me to leave it in a room with a bunch of scandalous rascals that are going to probably steal it the second I turn my back and go in through that door. And so I just turned around because I was so frustrated. There's a catch in the system with people with good intentions and a program and the money that's donated or earned or whatever, however they get it, there's a catch where almost a catch-22. You get right there to the edge of not being homeless anymore. You've got all your IDs and you have everything you need paperwork-wise to be a human being again in society, and you get to where you're right there, just damn near putting the key in the door, and something happens, and that's what's happening with me. And I don't mean like a bitch, I don't mean to bitch, but just to tell it like it is. I'm out here on the streets homeless because of ID theft that happened to me while I was in the VA getting an operation and going through chemo radiation. So I had no clue what was going on. I lost a home, I lost 5 vehicles and a motorhome, all my camera equipment, and a ton of other things while this was going on. And they emptied out my bank accounts, because I didn't know about all this digital theft crap, because I'd been in the hospital too long with all the cancer and stuff. I'm one of the Marines.
Okay. So according to what Eric's saying there, he was in a VA hospital, and while he was getting surgery for his cancer, he lost his vehicles, his motorhome, his camera equipment. Everything was stolen, and they drained his bank accounts. Then while he's homeless, his ID is stolen. You can see he's an articulate man. He's not high. He's not drunk. And he tells me the cops are coming every day, telling him to move. You can't be here. And he's like, where am I supposed to go? I don't have anything. I want to know, I understand the police have a job to do, and I like the new chief of police, and I like that his spirit is both compassion and accountability. But what can we tell the chief of police right now that could make Eric's situation a little better?
Well, first of all, I've met people who were on the streets. There was no alternative place for them to go. All the shelters were full, all the housing was full, and the police would come in, even in the midst of freezing winter, and run them off, engage in these raids against them. And if anybody's away from their tent, all their possessions would be scooped up, including their ID, if it was in their tents. And this happened to a lot of people, and they lose everything. It is absolutely the most inhumane means of dealing with those most in need in our community. And because of leaving so many people out on the streets, especially during the winters, there are people that have suffered amputations of fingers, of toes.
But as mayor, the mayor has a policy, which is let's keep them out of the park. Let's not make them visible. That's the policy.
That sounds like Donald Trump. He says either leave when you get offer no alternative place for them to go.
But what should Chief Red or the police do?
Well, the police, the League of Cities and Towns has put out a statement. So have psychological associations. Do not engage in these repeated, pointless raids on homeless people when you have no alternative place for them to go. Mm-hmm. So the number one thing is make sure there are alternative places for them to go, even if it's just shelter when they can get in from out of the elements and get food and have access to toilets and showers. Mm-hmm. That's the very least. But for now, going on almost 2 years, what was supposed to be a winter overflow shelter, and this is operated by Switchpoint as well. They're an amazing operator of these facilities, but it's been full. It's full today. If you're seeking shelter, you cannot get it. You're out on the streets and there's nowhere for people to go. So we need more of that. It's not that expensive, given what the alternative is, and especially for elderly people, mm-hmm. it is absolutely inhumane that we as a community can stand by. We have all these church buildings open. Mm. There have been 2 churches willing on the coldest evenings during the winter to open their doors. Neither of these churches are the predominant religion in this community that have a basketball court and an adjacent kitchen, which would be perfectly suited to help people out when they're out on the streets freezing. Mm-hmm. But we need everybody to come together, and certainly state, county, and city government to figure out how to solve these problems. And
well, one guy said something to me. We don't have that clip queued up, but he's like, why don't they just give us a 10-acre field? There's a bunch of 10-acre fields with a bunch of tough sheds. Like they always think about these solutions, and then they're 2 years away, 3 years away. The new homeless campus, they just announced where it's going to be. It's always been 3 years away, and now it's probably still 3 years away. It's like, why can't they just take a 10-acre field, put tough sheds in there, and at least have a place where people can go?
Well, they actually did sort of the equivalent of that. They're not tough sheds, but they're micro shelters.
Yeah,
and
like
there are
what
50
Switchpoint
of
did.
them, and Switchpoint operates those
Mm-hmm.
for the state as well. But
there's just not, those are full, right?
But it's
absolutely with a wait list usually,
capacity,
with a pretty long
waiting list.
Well,
Cody can speak to this. He works with Switchpoint. But let me just say this: we've got to get away from the stereotype that homelessness is all about mental illness and drug addiction. Mm-hmm. Those situations need to be addressed, and immediately. There are people openly engaging in drug sales and using drugs. Greg Kelly is doing this flyover with his drone, getting video that he's putting out, posting almost every day in our public parks. And the police don't do anything about it. They're not arresting. They're not getting prosecuted. And I'm not one to just say lock people up and increase our incarceration rates. But I certainly believe that you're not going to get them into drug court and into drug treatment unless you do bring them into the system. And there's got to be enforcement of the law and then a restorative justice approach to this.
100% agree. And I think the problem with the homeless seniors is they're all clumped in together with the drug addicts, with the mentally ill, and they're all treated as one population. Like, let's treat them all the same. They're all in the parks, and there's drug scenes going on in one corner. There's homeless seniors just trying to survive in another corner. There's no delineation. And so because of the lack of delineation of between the criminals, the convicts, the drug users, some people are not convicts and they're drug users, and then there's other people who are straight up mentally ill. And because we're not able to have an intake center that can handle all of them, they're all treated equally, and they're all treated equally horribly. And so I think it's almost like if we had a big tent out in where Camp Floyd was in the West Desert to deal with these, just an intake. Wouldn't that be better than what we've got now? Just people all in the way of the police trying to manage an order that they can't fulfill. What could we do in the next 3 months before it gets cold to deal with this huge increase in the homeless population?
Well, for one thing, you could line up other churches and places where people can go to get in and out of the cold, and don't do it just on what the legislature calls code blue evenings. This is how inhumane this is. They say, oh, we've got to provide for them on the coldest of evenings. Code blue is 17 degrees. So if it's over 17 degrees, oh, you don't need to worry about them then?
Yeah.
So there's that. But we also need, and you could get this up and running in no time, get another overflow shelter that's going to meet the need that is out there and that we know is going to be out there this winter. When I was mayor, we never had one person out in the freezing cold without the availability of shelter.
Yeah.
And even during the Olympics, we foresaw ahead of time that there were going to be a lot of people coming here thinking they were going to get jobs, they were going to be left out on the streets. We did an enormous overflow shelter at the old sort of mattress warehouse, and we provided for all of the needs. It wasn't, and if we hadn't, I would have opened up city buildings.
Yeah, why not?
When you've got people out there freezing, we have none of that care, concern, or compassion coming from our city elected officials or even the county, and certainly not the state. They've normalized it. That's a danger of when we see these tragedies year after year after year, people start accepting it as if that's the norm, instead of understanding how absolutely outrageous this is.
So Cody, I want to introduce you now. Tell me your position at Switchpoint.
So I'm an assistant regional director at Switchpoint, yeah.
And you guys have done an amazing job with the overflow shelter, like Rocky mentioned, in Mill Creek. You've done a really great job with the pop-ups, and I think your mindset is awesome, that you put these people to work. You give them ownership over the grounds and the place that they're inhabiting. But what do you think is the answer to the immediate problem that there's just too many homeless people, there's not enough shelters? What could we do?
Lack of opportunity, right? Everybody needs an opportunity to heal, right? Whether that's feeling safe within an environment, a shelter or a micro shelter, right? People are complex, so they heal differently, right? What we do at Switchpoint is just try to meet them where they are and see what we can do to help them just get to that next step. We're not thinking 2 or 10 steps ahead, right? We're just thinking about the next step ahead of them and trying to help them work through trauma, right, and referring them to other organizations who can help them with that. So there's just not a lot of access to those services, especially when there's been barriers built.
Yeah, let's play clip number 3, Ryan, if we can. This is a woman who's really quite old, out on the streets. Her daughter just died. It's a really sad case. But I want to play this clip and get your advice of what she can do. I believe her name is Julie. Do we have that queued up? All right, let's play the clip of Julie.
She knew what my health conditions were and being out here. And I've been out here, it was 2 years this July. I'm too old to be on the streets, and I'm not getting any better. I am, you know what I mean? And it's not safe out here anymore.
So 2 years this July you've been out here?
Just last July, yeah, last month.
Are you getting into the shelters at least?
No, no. I just want a place of my own. It's very hard. It's hard to explain when you've been out on the street for a long time. You get used to certain freedom and stuff, and then they want to put you in somewhere.
Oh,
and then
we'll stop it there.
you can't be able to say you're.
I'll try to summarize what she told me. Her family is on the streets. Like, she's made friends with the people in the park. They are helping her get everything she needed. There was a guy who shows up at one time a day and wheels her to go get her food, and wheels her over to go to St. Vincent's, and then wheels her where she sleeps at night. She doesn't get that kind of care and attention in any shelter or any permanent supportive housing. She gets better care and attention on the streets than she does in any shelter. And I'm like, but the guy who was helping her was right there. And then her friend Eric, who you heard from earlier, was right there. They don't have friends inside of shelters. They're isolated. They're given rules. They're given, a lot of times they tell us their stuff is stolen. What would you recommend? I have no idea. What would you recommend, Cody, she does?
So what we do at our shelter is we meet them where they're at. And what I mean by that is if they come in and they have a pocket full of drugs, we have an amnesty box that we turn into the police department, but we don't charge them with anything, right? So it's a courtesy that we do, right? After that, that's our check-in point, and then we give them a safe place to lock up their stuff so it can feel safe. Now, if they're going to one of our micro-shelter units, which, like Rocky said, has about 50, we're going to be hopefully expanding within the next year or so. That's going to be rolling out, but you just need more access to less congregate shelters, I think, and being close quarters with people.
Can you explain that? More access to less congregate shelters?
Yes.
Like,
so congregate, basically, you're in a very large room and there's bunks, right?
Yeah.
Where we see the healing be most effective is when someone has their own safe space, right? Whether that is in a affordable housing project or in one of our micro shelters. But the entry point, like you said, an intake point would be one of our overflow shelters. That's where people can get at least access to food, water, and the essentials and the basics, right?
Yeah.
But after that's not enough, right? There's got to be something else after that. So that would be where a micro shelter would come into place.
So after digging deeper with Julie, she was kicked out, evicted for smoking, I assume drugs probably. And that's the really hard part. The permanent supportive housing facilities are full of drug users. People can't go to a permanent supportive housing and get recovery. It's not a recovery place. It's more of a place that gets you stuck into using drugs until you die. That's what we've reported on in Magnolia. So how do you enforce the no drug use policy when you have to kick people like Julie out on the street?
So first we link them with their case manager if we start to see signs or issues of that, right? So we try to connect them with treatment providers, right? And if there's other like lease violations into that, the last resort that we want to do at Switchpoint is put somebody back out on the street, right? So if they go beyond our level of care or on our capacity, we try to refer them to somewhere that could take on their level of care.
Yeah.
If I might, Richard.
Yeah.
You painted with a very broad brush there, saying that all of these permanent supportive housing facilities, Magnolia has been a horrible problem. And I think we've talked about that probably even on this program before. But, and I know they're trying to clean that up. The grounds are much cleaner, and I think they're getting some more competent management in there. But they destroyed that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And as have some of the shelters in the city, but certainly not the overflow shelter that's run by Switchpoint and Switchpoint's permanent housing facilities. St. George, Tooele, 2 of them here in Salt Lake City. I've helped place people off the streets in Switchpoint. You're going to hear from 2 of them here today, Cowboy and Petey.
And
And they
Ken got sober in one of our communities.
Well, I
But-
need to absolutely differentiate the
Yes.
road home operated permanent supportive housing facilities,
Yeah.
whose director will not speak to me to this day. I've invited her on
Yeah.
at least a dozen times.
There's real public accountability.
Yeah.
When they won't even speak to you.
Yeah.
And I know Carol Howell's.
Yeah,
been
Carl's
the
been on here
program,
twice. So
the founder
so
and CEO
just
of
that
Switchpoint.
the level of transparency and openness about the problems. Of course, it's an extremely difficult
Oh, yeah.
problem, but you're willing to talk about it. Carol's willing to talk about it. The executive director, Michelle Flynn, she will not speak about it. She
That's the
she
road
thinks
home.
yeah, the road
Talking
home.
about.
Yeah, so you're right. I have to delineate.
Yeah.
And then also the village, the other side village. There's so far I don't know anybody's using drugs there. I have a very strict
It's not allowed.
policy because they have an intake apartment that they call the prep school, and they have to be totally clean and sober for 90 days before they get their tiny home. And I think that's just a great policy
I
because
think
you can't.
I think it goes right back to the opportunity, right? Giving somebody the opportunity to heal,
Mhm.
right? Regardless of the organization, right? But how you give them that opportunity and the accountability that comes with it and the follow through with that is where it counts the most.
So
Yeah.
what I was going to say earlier is Switchpoint. There were a couple of people that I helped get off the streets, and there were openings at Switchpoint, and they have been evicted because they were doing or selling drugs on the premises. So there is accountability there, unlike what we've seen at a lot of these other shelters. Certainly not the overflow shelter run by Switchpoint. They do a great job at that.
Yeah.
But that's the difference. You can look at successful models, and there are those, and what disappoints me is when people just throw up their hands in resignation and say nothing's working. Because there are programs that work incredibly well, and those are the programs that we need to be supporting and growing and make more available for people. Most of the people that I know at Switchpoint are working.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's key.
Yeah.
And then I go to the Magnolia. Now I have to say this caveat. I love the people at Magnolia. I know a lot of them. They're amazing people. But they tell me about the problem of the staff and the tenants not getting along. They really have an adversarial relationship, and they basically don't have a transformative recovery environment there. Instead, it's like, oh, how am I going to get away with this? Because if I get caught, then I'm going to face this problem. And this woman doesn't like me, so she gets mad at me for certain things, and I can't bring my relatives and friends in here because she doesn't like me. As opposed to Switchpoint, where I assume you treat everybody the same. You
Yeah.
have the same rules and regulations applying to everybody.
Absolutely. And we also try to empower our individuals, right? Because we know everybody's not going to walk a straight line, right?
Yeah.
So trying to empower them and also setting the example. And I think our staff do a really good job about bridging that gap.
So I want to play this clip of the difficulties of rules and regulations, which is making housing unavailable. It's clip number 4, Ryan. This is why a lot of people are out on the streets right now. But this is not related to the senior housing problem. It starts at 10, 11. Oh, is it? Okay. Oh, I guess it does apply. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. This is still Julie.
Certain freedom and stuff, and then they want to put you in somewhere, and then you can't be with, say, your boyfriend or
I don't
your
think this is
significant
it.
other. There's no.
She's
time
been
for
saying it's very hard to
at
explain
all
why you've been
with
on the
them,
streets.
Or they, put you in an apartment where you can't have friends over. Like,
Oh, that's it.
Are you supposed to be getting us back on track to do adult things like living in an apartment and paying rent and doing whatever? Then we can't have friends over. Like, we can't have a friend over for coffee. Like, we, like, we're adults. I don't want to be treated like a 3-year-old child anymore. Yeah, I'm too old for that. So that's what we dig our heels in. Yeah, we don't belong out here, but we don't want to be dictated by silly bulls like that. But I can't even have my neighbor over for coffee. So, what is it you want? And most of us are great people, just some bad things happen in our lives. I don't know what to say, but
Okay. How did you lose? What she's explaining there is why she's given up on both the shelters and the housing availability. I don't think she ever stayed at a Switchpoint facility.
Yeah.
So she said they stopped letting her to have her friends over. They said, just like I explained, this rule applies to you because we've decided you're a problem. And the first thing they do when they decide you're a problem is not let you have your friends in the building. And so tell me how it works at Switchpoint.
See, at Switchpoint we have with accountability, right? We allow our guests to have visitors from, I believe it's like 7 a.m. all the way up until 10 p.m. And their visitors have to sign a visitor agreement, right? Which is saying that they're going to respect the property and the rules and not participate in illegal activities,
that seems
right?
Reasonable.
So after they sign that, then they're able to visit whoever they're visiting, right?
Yeah.
After 3 months, 3 months of the visitor visiting, and after I think 6 months of tenancy for the tenant, they can have an overnight guest, right?
Wow.
As long as they are above 18 years old, that guest and visitor has not been a problem. We respect our guests' autonomy.
That makes a lot of sense. I think your microphone, Rocky, needs to be flipped on. Let me see this. Yeah, it was off. My bad.
And our goal is not to build more barriers and challenges. Our goal is to help them heal through their own process, right? And connecting them to the right organizations.
But it's
that can
a
help them.
very clear set of rules in place that
From
that's
the
applied
beginning.
to everybody equally, all the same.
Absolutely.
I think that's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's how it should be. So let's move on to our next clip. So this is a woman, the same woman, talking about her friend who's getting kicked out, who's terminally ill. She's being evicted because of her dog tether. And this one I actually want to investigate, because how could anybody who is terminally ill be kicked out because apparently she put a stake in the ground and that's against the rules, and she's being kicked out because of that? It's unbelievable. Play that clip now.
Can you tell us about your friend who's getting...
Sorry, 1 second here.
It's hard, but just
How old are you?
63.
Can you tell us about your friend who's getting evicted, who's got terminal... Is it terminal cancer?
Barbara, yes, and she's terminally ill with stage 4 breast cancer. And she's just little, she's only 76 pounds, she's wasting away to nothing. She has her dog, and her dog is young, but not like a puppy, but she got a stake to put in the yard that has a lead on it. Well, apparently that isn't allowed to liability, maybe you could trip another resident there or something. And instead of just telling her that wasn't allowed and could she move it like she wasn't allowed to have it, they gave her an eviction notice. And
Yeah, just
for
to
about 3
just
days,
so I
yeah,
understand.
3 days, so she has a day and a half left.
Where's
She'll
she
be
at?
on the street, out here, she'll be out here. This isn't a place that Barbara shouldn't be out here.
What apartment is she at?
It's, I don't know, but they're right over the Guadalupe Bridge, right down the street there. Just little, they look like little cabanas almost, and they're darling little places, and Barbara was so happy, and she was feeling very discouraged this morning when she came down, that she was getting kicked out.
So if I understand you, she put a stake in the ground for her dog,
Yes, it's like a metal stick.
and because of that, they're kicking her out?
Yeah, because of the lead line on it, and she put her dog so he could run around in the yard. They said that was a liability issue and she couldn't have it. And they're giving her an eviction notice over it. And I think that's just unusual, way cruel.
Okay.
To do an older one.
Do you know what she's talking about? What little cabanas, cute little cabanas off of Guadalupe? I don't know.
No.
Yeah, it's,
I can tell you, when I visit Switchpoint's facilities, tenants have their dogs. They're beloved. They take great care of them. People are at home there. They find real respect and dignity that certainly they didn't find on the street, and many of them didn't find when they were tenants before they ended up on the street. It is so amazing to me. You and I were at a conference. It was put on by Utah Solutions. Mm-hmm. Governor Cox was there with a writer on opioids and homelessness.
Yeah.
And the entire time, I finally walked out, I was so angry that all they talked about in terms of homelessness was drug addiction and mental illness. Mm-hmm. And it just perpetuates the stereotype that ignores what these people in their position, especially the governor, ought to be dealing with, and that is we don't have livable wages and people cannot afford the increasing costs of rent in our increasingly unaffordable housing.
Yeah. Yeah, that rabbit hole I've been down myself. That particular author, Sam Quinones, did a really incredible job understanding the opioid epidemic leading to the fentanyl crisis.
Yeah.
And that was the focus of that conference. But I think you're right. That focusing on the drugs eclipses the greater problem, which is homeless seniors are out on the street getting harassed as if they are mentally ill and drug addicted, and that is absolutely a travesty.
Yeah, I've never heard the Utah Solutions talk about what we do about getting better jobs, better wages, and affordable housing, because those are the major problems. The vast majority of people on the street are there because they cannot afford housing anymore.
I want to talk about affordable housing before we get to Cowboy and the other guests, because that is something that I've had Steve Waldrop on this program. He's been directed by the governor to solve affordable housing. Really smart guy. He's in finance. He understands the difficulty in financing tiny homes, rezoning areas for mixed use, that the NIMBYism really is fierce when you ever try to say we want to do a different kind of zoning. But I question the real passion or the feeling of let's solve this problem being a major issue in the Utah State Legislature.
It's because most of them are developers.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot. I drive my daughter to a new school, American Preparatory Academy. There's all these giant 10-acre lots of derelict farms. And I'm like, there's a tracks line going right behind them. And I'm like, okay, there's acreage close to the city of potential lots that could be developed as a tiny home community, just like the one off Indiana Avenue at the other side Academy, just like the one Switchpoint did by the freeway. These could be little tiny lots. What's the problem now? Like, why can't we just do this? Like, make it so we just say we're solving a major crisis here. There's not enough affordable housing. Let's make tiny little lots for tiny homes. Let's get a lot of people off the street into affordable housing. Let's let them buy the lot. Why don't we do that?
Well, the Republicans and Democrats both generally follow this neoliberal model of reliance on the market and on profit-driven developers. That is the crux of the problem. There are countries all over the world. In Vienna, 70% of people live in what they call social housing. Maybe we need to call it non-market housing. But it's, when you pay your rent, that money's going toward operational expenses, paying off whatever loans are on the property, and what's the third element? Profit to the developers.
But the issue with that is we give affordable housing grants to these developers with deep pockets already. We say, oh, here you go, make the affordable housing happen. It has not happened.
No, but it stays.
Why not just say, as a governor or a mayor, I'm making a mandate, these 10-acre lots that were former farms, they're going to be tiny home villages. So we're going to allow it, the market, some developer could say, could purchase it, But you could maybe put a cap on the profit level, but work with the city developers and the tracks, the UTA, to offer a real solution more immediately than just giving the money to a developer who's partnering with the state to somehow produce, subsidized housing. Isn't that what Vienna does?
No.
They subsidize the housing?
They finance the housing, and then they own it. So they've got control of it's not the market forces anymore. People, once they get in apartments in these countries, they can stay in. They're secure that the market is not going to drive them out, because now it's a nonprofit developer, whether it's a governmental entity or a nonprofit corporation, and they are mixed use. Mayor Mendenhall has, when she talks about social housing, she has no idea what she's talking about. She says, oh, that's like the federal projects model. It's not. You make these places nice enough that just about everybody wants to live there. You've got people at mixed incomes. If you're at a higher income, you pay higher rent. And then...
But you could trust the Utah State Legislature, all the developers there, to do something like that and not be getting their hands in the pot.
No, I wouldn't trust them to do it. And that's why we have the problem we have, is because they want to funnel everything into the for-profit market for the developers. We as the people, Seattle did this. They passed a referendum demanding that there be social housing.
Yeah.
That there be a commitment. And, a municipality like Salt Lake City could go borrow money at a lower rate than private developers. You could build these places, and then you take the rent income in, you pay off toward the loan, you pay operational expenses, but you never have to worry about that third huge element that's driving up costs, and that is the profit. Yeah. And then you control who is going to be able to come in and at what rates, and keep it mixed income.
Well, as a capitalist, my problem is, I think we live in an ownership society in the United States. If we allowed people to own tiny home lots, give them the ability to own a lot for, even if it was even $100,000, $150,000 just for the lot, they'd find a way to build on that lot to suit their needs. And then over time, they could build something nicer, bigger, but just give people the ability to own it. And then I think we can agree on, we need to eliminate all the middlemen collecting all these fees and all these profits and all these additional ways that they're able to gain more money, but give the owner the ability to do what they want with their own property, but make the lot size smaller.
Those middlemen are the capitalists that you seem so enamored with. We need to look at housing as a public benefit, a public right. And just like our roads, just like our airports, just like our libraries, so much else that government does or makes possible, we need to switch off this thinking that housing is all about developers making their profit. Take it out of that
But the developer
entirely.
ends up building the higher tower units, and then you don't necessarily own it because there's all these strings attached. Whereas if you just stay on the ground, close to the ground, it's not going to cost $300,000-$500,000 per unit. It can cost the cost of an elaborate tough shed. So anyway, I think we agree that affordable housing is a giant issue that needs to be solved. That would alleviate the homeless problem we have. That would alleviate the seniors on the street that we find. And I think you have a social democracy solution. I think that there is room for the free market to operate if there wasn't the politicians/developers running the state legislature. If it was simply a mandate, we are going to have tiny home villages all over, and we're going to put that zoning in place now. I, as a property owner, as a landlord, I would buy one of those properties in a heartbeat to sell the lots individually to people. I think that the mindset is that we have folks who have been in the state legislature and become millionaires because they buy the land next to track stations, next to front runner stations. They become millionaires. They tell all their buddies, hey, I found this gravy train you can ride on. It's called the state legislature, and you can find out where those transit-oriented developments are going to be, and then you can buy the land. And so it's just this giant gravy train that they're all riding on and celebrating it, patting each other on the back. And that's obviously not working. But I don't think more government is the solution. It's something we could debate about. Maybe
Yeah, well,
later on.
we can debate about it, but I say look at what works around the world. And it's social housing. It's non-market housing. You take the profit out of housing so that it's affordable for everybody.
Yeah. And so, Kenneth, I love your pop-up homes. Could you expand that concept to go all across the Wasatch Front to have far more housing supply than what we have now?
So that is a project being managed by us. The Office of Homeless Services is the one funding that project. Again, I think it's just a matter of funding and getting the right people thinking the right way.
Yeah.
And I think ideally there is a lot of space.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of opportunity there, and there's also a lot of need for opportunity for people to heal. So I think the more space, the better.
I think it's cool how you see the templates now appearing in the tiny home village and in your pop-up flexible housing solution, and there it is. Just copy and paste it. So,
Can I add one thing to this, and that is all these good things that are being done, the housing, Switchpoint housing in particular, the overflow shelters that are inadequate. We need more and more of those, but they're affordable and they need to be in place by this winter. All of this is going to be given the short shrift now that the state has come up with this new campus plan. So I foresee them putting the money into that. That's the new shiny thing. And the money is not going in to supporting what's really been shown to work. And that is, I mean, you see this complex that Switchpoint has out in Tooele. As far as I know, no funding now from the state. Switchpoint's digging in deeper and deeper into their reserves because they're not getting the support that they need. And it's outrageous that I mean, we need, a campus of some sort. Certainly, I totally support that. But don't put all your marbles there and forget about what's working and support increased housing and sustain that we have now.
Yeah.
It's working so well.
So talk a little bit more about that, Kenneth, your place out in Tooele.
Cody?
Or Cody,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, you're good. So out in Tooele, there's a school that has been adapted and turned into not only a shelter for family, but also for male and female. And then there's housing that has been added in the back that's operated in unison with the Tooele Housing Authority. And with that, we see a lot of success. It is in a rural area, right? So we're able to take on as many people will walk in the door usually, right? But sometimes we do turn people away because there is such a high need. But there, people are getting access to healing. They're getting a safe place. They're able to eat. It's dorm-style living.
So it's
in
both
the shelter.
housing and shelter.
Yes, it's in a separate area. So that the housing's actually built on the back of it.
Wow.
And in the front, it used to be an old school, but we serve meals there through the whole community.
Is that something that could be
seniors.
expanded a lot in that area to
The
accommodate
blueprint's
far more
there.
people?
The
Really?
blueprint's there, but it's just a matter of having the right things in place.
And there's daycare as well, right?
Yes, there's daycare as well, and that also happens out in St. George's, the Stepping Stones daycare. So with that daycare, we're able to help people so they can go to work, watch their children, so they can help build their family back.
That's great.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. I actually didn't know much about that at all, but
Yeah.
it sounds like a great solution.
Absolutely.
Well, the point is, I think that everybody should be aware of is that the homeless population is increasing according to the key findings. This is the state Office of Homeless Services 2025 annual data report. We have a 12% increase in children experiencing homelessness. They're now 14% of the population, of the homeless population. We have a 42% increase in people over the age of 64 experiencing homelessness. 42%, almost 50% more seniors experiencing homelessness. And it's keeps going up and up, according to the Kim Gardner Policy Institute. Nationally, this age group has grown from 13% of the U.S. population. So it's grown more than twice just the increase in the population who are aging out. And veterans have seen a 36% rise in homelessness over the past year. That's incredibly high. And we have now 10,200 individuals in Utah experiencing homelessness for the first time, according to the HMIS data. And homelessness is supposed to be brief, and that's not working out. Most people who are getting on the streets, they wanted it to be a 90-day occurrence. In 2024, 75% of emergency shelter stays were 90 days or less. That's good, but that's down from 80% in 2023. The average length of stay in emergency shelter increased 10 days. Percentage of individuals staying 12 months or more was only 2%. So we're just seeing an increase all over with all demographics, but especially the elderly, especially our veterans. And we're not seeing really great transformative solutions out there right now. So I think, with the exception of Switchpoint, I think you guys are doing an awesome job, and everybody I've talked to who's staying at your facilities has great things to say about you. We went and interviewed people at those pods, and they were all in recovery. They were getting recovery help and support that they needed. So I commend you guys. Kenneth. sorry. Cody.
No worries.
I'm not going to.
No worries.
Yeah. But I appreciate you coming on today and talking about it. Yeah. And you guys are doing a great job. And I thank you so much for coming on, Rocky. I'll have your guests that you brought with us on with you, and we'll talk to them as well.
Excellent. I just want to say, one of the guests, and she can tell you her story, but I met Petey when she was on the streets. I met her, first of all, on the island on 5th West, just trying to survive. She'd had a job, had an apartment. COVID came along. She lost her job, lost her apartment. There she was on the street. And the last time I saw her on the street, she was sleeping in the gutter underneath an overpass. She had a friend that was on the street also. That morning, she had awakened with a man on top of her, unzipping his pants, and was ready to commit sexual assault against her. And if there hadn't been another homeless man right there to hear her friend scream out, there would have been a sexual assault. And I doubt they would have called the police, because all the police had done up to that point is run them off from one place to another without an alternative place to stay. I got Carol. I said, please come meet Petey. She did. She got her to the top of the list. Petey has been thriving. I picked her up today. I had to go find her working in the kitchen down at Switchpoint, because that's where she's working, has a great life, and now her son is doing spectacularly. And also, he works for Switchpoint. Even though
that's
he's got
awesome.
an apartment off the campus.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to have our guests of people who've gotten into permanent supportive housing. Is that the commonality? They're all in permanent supportive housing through Switchpoint?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, these
And
ones, yes.
Great. So we'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Cody,
Yeah.
let's